Hey, what's up everyone? It's Dubpace here. Little bit of a different video today. Instead of doing a guide, I'm going to be talking about the Tarkov economy as a whole. Recently, there's been a lot of community discussion regarding the Bitcoin farm and the rising price of Bitcoin, and I wanted to give my own take with my own perceptions of the economy, as well as my suggestions of how we can move on from this point. Let's jump right into it. In a recent video by Pestily, he described this wipe as the easiest wipe of all time because it's so simple to make money through the Bitcoin farm. I'm going to be on another side of the camp here and make my arguments for why we shouldn't nerf the Bitcoin farm. At least not in the ways that are planned or that people are suggesting. So why do I not want them to nerf the Bitcoin farm? Is it because I'm one of the people that invested early in the Bitcoin farm, super early in the wipe, and got stupid rich, and now I have a huge unfair advantage over all other players? Well, that's part of it. But it's actually more than that. For me, I really believe that keeping the dynamic nature of the Bitcoin farm is crucial to keeping the Tarkov economy really dynamic and interesting. And what I mean by that is I believe that the Bitcoin in Tarkov should remain tied to the real life Bitcoin price. So as Bitcoin's price rises in real life, Bitcoin rises in the game and vice versa. Just take a second and think about it. Something that's happening in real life, an unprecedented event where Bitcoin is rising to all-time highs that are greater than many people's wildest expectations in this time frame. That event is also directly impacting the video game that you play. People are not only getting stupid rich in the video game, they are also literally changing the way that they play. Players are playing only maps where you can easily find graphics cards because it directly supports the Bitcoin farm, and they have the greatest price increase of almost any item versus last wipe. I remember buying graphics cards for around 250,000 rubles at the end of last wipe, and already just the other day I sold a graphics card for 1.75 million rubles in Tarkov. How incredible is it that something in real life impacted the game in such a significant way? That dynamic nature, for me, that's truly interesting. That's something different that Tarkov is doing that almost no other game is doing that's out there. Is there another game doing this? Let me know. So this wipe is a great example of what happens when the Bitcoin price is pumping and is super high up. But imagine what's going to happen on the inverse situation. We don't even really know yet because a lot of things have changed. It's more expensive to make the Bitcoin farm now. As many of you have seen, it costs like 75,000 euros to upgrade your solar power, which is required to get to Bitcoin farm level 3. What's going to happen when people spend millions and millions and millions of rubles in another wipe and the Bitcoin price drops like crazy? As many of us know, Bitcoin is a very volatile asset and at times before has shed up to 80% of its total value. So this wipe, people are playing like crazy chads. Everyone's got their meta gear on, everyone's got their meta HK with their perfect meta ammo in there. But what's gonna happen when people make a really large investment into the Bitcoin farm in another wipe, and then the price drops dramatically, and maybe you'll never even ever recoup your costs of the Bitcoin farm? It's sort of an interesting scenario, and it's just something to think about that we've only seen one half of the equation. We've only seen the dynamic nature of Bitcoin impact the game in a way in which people get really rich. But what about the other scenario where it's gonna make people really poor and scrounging to get whatever they want? Wouldn't it be really interesting to see how the game plays differently in those two scenarios? That's one of my first arguments to not nerf the Bitcoin farm. In general, to really summarize that main point, my main point is whatever you do, do not lock the Bitcoin price at a static price. As many streamers, many community members are suggesting, they say, hey, just make the Bitcoin 250,000 rubles, whatever. For me, that's just the laziest solution to this problem. I think it's really short-sighted, it's only thinking in the now, and it also removes this really cool, amazing, dynamic element of the Tarkov economy in which something that's happening in real life is actually impacting the way people play this game. If you don't think that's cool, then you're not going to agree with me, and that's okay. All right, with all of that being said, I do want to say it seems like the Bitcoin production is a little bit out of control this wipe. I do feel it's perhaps a little bit too easy to be making money, passive money in which you don't even need to be raiding. And in fact, a good friend of mine, we frequently joke with each other. We're like, hey, you know the best way to make money in Tarkov? You don't play Tarkov and you just let the Bitcoin farm just print money for you. I agree it's a bit out of control, but there is a middle ground in which we can keep the dynamic nature of the Bitcoin price in the game and still find a way to scale it in a way that it doesn't overly disrupt the economy when the price is fluctuating with Bitcoin in real life. So instead of nerfing the Bitcoin farm, my suggestion to fix the Bitcoin farm is to include another dynamic variable from the real life Bitcoin network into the game. And that variable is the network difficulty or the mining difficulty to create a new Bitcoin. If they included this from real life, I'm not sure if there's an API out there that they could do it, then they could essentially very easily balance how many Bitcoins are being introduced to the market, because as the price rises of Bitcoin, that means that there's more people that want to mine it, which means that it becomes harder and harder to mine the Bitcoin, which means that you will ultimately release less Bitcoin into the market because it takes longer to mine them. I think this is a really nice solution because then BSG doesn't constantly have to play a game of whack-a-mole where the price goes down too much, it's no longer profitable, and then they need to alter with a bunch of different things of how to craft the Bitcoin farm and how do you craft a graphics card, do we lessen how much you need to do that? There's just a whole lot of changing a bunch of variables. One really easy way is to take two dynamic pieces of information from the real world and use those two pieces to balance each other out. So the network difficulty or the mining difficulty would help balance out the Bitcoin price. Hope that makes sense. There's another thing that BSG has said that they're planning to do to sort of balance out this dynamic in the market, and that is adding durability to your graphics cards in the Bitcoin farm. So over time, your graphics cards, they will degrade in quality and eventually break, and you'll need to replace them and put a new one in. From an outside perspective, it's easy to look at that and say, oh, well, that's good. It's another money sink that will cut into the Bitcoin profits. But for me, I'm not a huge fan of this idea personally, because I believe that anytime that you're going to increase demand for these graphics cards, it doesn't really do great things for the game. In case if you guys haven't been playing this wipe, the general meta of the wipe is people running interchange all day, because it is the absolute best way to get graphics cards. And a lot of those people running on interchange, they're not even bringing a gun. They're just trying to shove it in their secure container before they get out. This is a whole new can of worms that I'm opening right here, so I'll go through it really fast. But another take that I got from watching Pestely's recent State of Tarkov video is that when players load into a raid, the gear that players bring in is actually on an inverse bell curve. So on one super high end of the bell curve, it's just filled with people that are hatchet running and pistol running, or like pure budget kit, just spending hardly anything on their kits. And then on the other end of the high spectrum, over on the other side, is a bunch of people that just bring in only meta kits, the best stuff, the best gear. They want to have the best chance fighting other players that are really good, so they bring all the best stuff. It's all meta. And then in the middle, there's hardly anybody at all running these mid-tier kits. There's almost no one that loads in with, like, you know, a level 4 armor and a mediocre gun with mediocre ammo. It exists, but it's definitely way more rare, which is why it's an inverse bell curve. For me to start solving the problem of the bell curve, something needs to be done to at least address how easy it is to make profitable, insanely profitable raids just by being a pistol runner or a hatchet runner. And especially because for the most part, they don't fear dying at all because of the way that the secure container works, and you can just put that graphics card straight into your Bitcoin farm. So that's all to say that for me, increasing demand on the graphics cards by increasing graphics card durability, I think that will result in more people doing hatchet running and more people doing the pistol running. And for me, that's something I would really like to see reduced so that we could sort of flatten that bell curve a little bit, or instead of having an inverse bell curve, we could flip that and have just a normal bell curve where there's a lot of people running mid-tier kits. And my suggestion to get started on that is to prevent found in raid items from going into your secure container. Stop. Unless it can go into your documents case or your SIC case. So I think that that's a really nice compromise. The docs case and SIC case, they can fit a variety of really valuable items, including folder with intelligence, pro kill medallion, skull, Bitcoin itself. There's still plenty of stuff that can go into your secure container, and it wouldn't eliminate hatchet running altogether, but I think it would solve the problem of people just going straight for the GPUs, shoving it straight into their secure container, and then they don't even care if they die. They're just out of that raid the fastest way possible. And for my final idea of balancing the Bitcoin farm, I was thinking it might be a good idea to try devaluing graphics cards. Right now, you can fit 50 of them to get the most efficient possible Bitcoin farm. What if it was not just graphics cards that were being used? Because as we've seen, this results in people just running interchange all day. And that's my least favorite map, so this is not my favorite meta. What if BSG introduced something else in the game that also goes into the Bitcoin farm and could make it even more efficient than just graphics cards, and at the same time probably reduce the amount of graphics cards needed? And my idea was they should include an ASIC machine, because if anyone knows about Bitcoin mining, it's actually rare these days to mine using actual graphics cards. There are things called ASIC miners, application specific integrated circuit. And these ASIC miners, they're literally perfectly designed and geared specifically for the computations that Bitcoin needs. So these ASIC miners, maybe these could be introduced into the world, and maybe they could be introduced in a variety of different maps that aren't just interchange, so that there's more incentive for players to be fighting over that chance to get that super high tier loot needed to truly perfect your Bitcoin farm. Maybe diversifying away from only graphics cards could really help. And that's about it. I'm assuming that probably half of the people that are going to comment on this video are just going to see the title and write some random stuff in the comment section. So if you're one of those people that watch the whole thing, I would love to hear your genuine thoughts on my ideas. They're definitely not perfect. I'm not the developer. I don't have all the data, and I trust that BSG knows way better than I do. But at the same time, I wanted to put my feedback out there, throw my hat in the ring, and give my own suggestions to try to help the community. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and please stay tuned for more Escape from Tarkov content coming soon, and consider subscribing to make sure you don't miss it.